Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Chee-Tash. My name is Chris, and today we're going to be talking about the book Eloquent JavaScript. If you guys remember, we have left off at chapter 8, talking about bugs and errors, and today we're going to talk a little bit about debugging. It's going to be a pretty short section. If you guys remember, last time we talked about testing in JavaScript, and really that section really was very relatable to some of the other videos we've done on Uncle Bob Martin's books, Clean Code and Clean Coder. So we talked about how to test, TDD. We talked about how testing and writing tests are basically like writing documentation, and they express the function of what your program is trying to do, and it expresses that in the form of unit tests. So there's a ton of videos on the channel about testing, and I encourage you to check that out. We talk about TDD a lot, actually. So today, very short section on debugging, and I'll just kick it off here. We'll go to the first slide. So Mergen starts out this section by saying, once you figure out that something is wrong, you have to figure out what the problem is. And sometimes that's very obvious. Sometimes you have an error propagation already there, so you have maybe like a try catch, right? And then your code jumps to the catch, and then you are printing out the error that is caught. Okay, that's pretty easy. But what if you don't have that? What if it's not as obvious? Well, the most important thing to do is just don't make random changes to your code in order to try to mitigate the error, or get out of the error. Mergen says that we have to first think, and then we have to analyze, and then we have to theorize. I think I actually added that one. Theorize. But you think, you analyze, you theorize, and then you test it out. So don't just start making the changes. Kind of think about what is happening in your code. What do you want to happen? And what is happening currently? And then come up with a theory as to why something might be happening. And then when you test it out, you can pinpoint certain areas of your code and leave these console.log statements, leave print statements, so that certain values are printed within your web browser, and then you can use that to debug the results or the certain results that you see. So if you see something that's being printed that you do not expect, well, there you have a clue, and you can work up the chain or down the chain, or you can look around in your code as to why that might be printing. You can also use the debugger in your IDE. I find that I can use the debugger at least on WebStorm, because I use IntelliJ or Idea's WebStorm IDE a lot for work, and I can't really debug when the app is live or like when I'm running it locally. But if I run my unit tests, I can usually run those in debug mode, and then I can step through certain parts of the code. So another reason why maybe unit tests are so important, because they're, again, like little documentation pieces, and they should pass. So if you see something wrong with your code or some errors, well, then your unit test should also maybe see the errors as long as you've written them, and then maybe it can be a little bit simpler to debug from there. So don't just make random changes. Think, analyze, theorize, and then test. So you can test in using Google Chrome, and I know Google Chrome is pretty popular. I don't know if you can do this in other browsers, actually. I actually haven't checked that. Maybe Mozilla. I don't know about Safari or Microsoft Edge or any of the other web browsers out there. But in Google Chrome, if you right-click and inspect, and then if you go to the Sources tab on the panel that opens, if you open one of the JS files you want to debug and set a breakpoint, you can set a breakpoint. So what you do is you click on the line number and then a blue arrow icon will appear. And I'll show you this in a second. Refresh the page and you can see the program stop the execution at your breakpoint. You can view the watch section in the corner to keep track of any variables. Excuse me, guys. So this is just some pictures of this in action. So you inspect the element, and I'm just using Google, probably not the best example, but just so you guys can see where I'm going here. So when you inspect, you go to sources, you find your specific JS file. Like here, it's drive.mojom-webui.js, and then you click on a line, and this blue label, blue arrow icon will appear. And then this is just a blown up picture of it. You have this watch section on the right where you can watch for certain variables that come up. So when you run your program, it'll stop at this line 18. Now, this is Google Chrome. When I refresh it or something, it doesn't really work or stop here exactly, just because I'm not really totally familiar with all of these files, but this is where it would stop here on this line 18. So lint tools are another way to debug. Lint tools provide analysis of your code in order to catch errors and bugs before running or committing your code. So there are sometimes hooks that run, commit hooks, especially if you're using, or like an IDE and you commit using the IDE versus the command line. There will be commit hooks that run and analyze your code that you're committing and let you know if there's any errors or warnings in your code. So this does it for me all the time in IntelliJ. It'll say, oh, commit contains 5 warnings and 1 error. Are you sure you want to commit? And I'll check it over just to make sure it's nothing blatant, and then I'll commit it. So this is also another tool, ES. There's ESLint. There's also SonarLint. SonarLint, I think we use for our Java projects, and then ESLint for our front-end projects. Yeah, so there's ESLint. But other JavaScript ones, there's JSLint, JSHint. So linting is another way you can use to debug or catch errors and bugs. And this is actually even something just in your IDE when you start typing out code and like the red line appears underneath something that you're writing, like that's kind of a lint right there. And that's kind of warning you right away at like, oh, something's syntactically wrong. So when you run your code, obviously it's not going to run, but there it catches it even before, I guess, before runtime. I was going to say before compile time too. So another tool to help with debugging. And actually, that's going to do it, guys. I know, very short video. Next section, as we continue our journey down Eloquent JavaScript, we're going to talk about error propagation. So I'm just kind of going back and forth between Eloquent JavaScript and the clean coder. I did have a comment recently saying, or asking me to do a video on inheritance, an additional video on inheritance. So maybe I could do like a live coding example video. I know I've been thinking about doing that for a long time and thinking about updates to this channel and making it more valuable for people. So I might do that, but give me some time and I'll get that up. Thank you guys very much for listening. Really, really appreciate it. Check out the podcast. And thank you guys so much. My name is Chris. This has been Chee-Tash. Take care, everybody.